Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me once again this week, my co-host, Stephen Young of Roto Grinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're talking bets for the South Point 400 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at the Charlotte Roval, Kyle Larson dominated and won. Obviously Kyle Larson clinches his way into the round of 8. Christopher Bell finished second. William Byron finished third. I had outrights on, of course, second and third, Christopher Bell and William Byron. I wasn't quite able to get there on Kyle Larson. He was priced much shorter. So if something had happened to him, I would have been sitting pretty. But Stevie, we did not have you last week. I know you were dealing with Hurricane Milton. You're a little under the weather this week, but you're powering through it. Stevie, welcome back to the show. Glad you're doing great. Sickness aside, and give us your thoughts on the Roval.
Yeah, I mean, untimely caution, I feel like killed my strategy for the race as far as like betting and fantasy. So it was a really bad week for me. You're going to have those bad weeks. I feel like I've had more bad weeks than good weeks this year. It's just one of those types of years.
Yep.
And last year I felt the opposite. I felt like I had more good weeks than bad weeks. So Kyle Larson was the best car. He won the race. Happy for Kyle Larson. He just keeps dominating. You know, you kind of expect him to be in the championship 4, but now we get into the round of 8 where it's very condensed, very close right from the get-go. I wouldn't say there's like a wild card race. Martinsville is Martinsville. I mean, it's all about qualifying in Martinsville. So, you know, you go to Vegas this week, and then you go to Homestead, 2 really good racetracks that produce really good racing. Either one of these racetracks could be the championship race instead of Phoenix, and I'd be happy. But, you know, the Roval was the Roval. I wish we'd go back to the Oval, but it's not going to happen. They keep talking about how good the ratings were and stuff like that. And it's just like, who cares? Like, the racing on the 1.5s is just so much better. I think that would have been way, way cooler, but it is what it is. Happy for Larson. Happy that my Christopher Bell bets get in. Really sad for Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman had a really good run going as far as the playoffs and doing what he needed to do. And the fact that they didn't appeal it, they were definitely doing something with that car. So I hate it for Alex Bowman. I think that he would have had a good chance to get in even if like they didn't have that car underweight. So hate it for Bowman. And Joey Logano keeps doing his thing. Again, Joey Logano is really scary in this round. These are some good tracks for him.
Yeah, definitely. Do hate it for Alex Bowman. So for those of you who don't know, Alex Bowman was disqualified for being under the weight limits after the Charlotte Roval. His finish at the Roval was good enough to get him through to the round of 8 of the playoffs. However, with the disqualification, that allowed Joey Logano to leapfrog him in the points, putting Alex Bowman out. Joey Logano into the round of 8, also in the owner's points because of some playoff points that were taken away earlier in the year from Tyler Reddick. His number 45 team of 2311 gets into the owner's points round of 8. Of course, Tyler Reddick is still in on the driver's side there as he was very clear there after the race, even before the disqualification by 4 or 5 points. So our round of 8, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano. Before we get into our picks, before we talk Las Vegas, any thoughts on who you think you'll see in the championship 4, Stevie?
I just want to say like how balanced it looks. 3 Chevys, 3 Toyotas, two Fords. Kudos to those drivers. Championship 4, it's hard not to like Larson at plus 33, especially with 2 intermediate tracks and Homestead. Kyle Larson, very good at Homestead. So it's hard not to like Larson. I really like Christopher Bell. I've been on Christopher Bell all year. So that's not changing. He's really good here. I kind of have Tyler Reddick getting in to my final 4. I think this is a really good 2. Like the next 2 races are really good for Tyler Reddick. And if he's in a good position, Martinsville might be good. And then I want it to be William Byron, right? I like William Byron. I think that we're going to see like a Ryan Blaney or Denny Hamlin get in over William Byron. But I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if the top 4 get in. You know, this is one of those years where if we look at speed, those 4 guys are right up there. Hamlin's there, Blaney's there, Elliott's there. Joey's like the one guy. It's like
Yeah.
But Joey can win at any of these 3 tracks. So, and with Paul Wolf on the box, like,
Oh, yeah.
if there becomes like a strategy moment. So, I mean, right now I'd say Larson, Bell, Reddick, and then I'd probably put Hamlin in over Byron. But I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Byron.
Yeah, my final 4 is the top 4. So I have Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, William Byron. For me, this is a great round for William Byron. He was arguably the second or third best car in the first Las Vegas race, other than getting the world's largest trash bag on his car, ingesting a beer can into the radiator. Still came back to finish 10th on the, after having to go a lap down to deal with all that and having an issue with the radiator. So, but he was running top 3 the whole race prior to that. He's great at Homestead. He's great at Martinsville, multiple wins there. I think this is a William Byron round, honestly. So I like him. Yeah. Reddick is the one that scares me the most of the top 4. But like you mentioned, if he's going to be fine at Vegas and Homestead, which should be 2 very strong tracks for him, I'm less worried about Martinsville. But hey, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, they can always go out and win Martinsville. I think Chase Elliott, he's going to be very strong at all 3 tracks. And of course, Denny Hamlin can win any of these races. So this round's wide open. It's going to be exciting. And it all starts with Las Vegas, which is a 1.5 mile standard intermediate track. Got some banking there, got some tire wear there since it was repaved more than a decade ago. So we're, kind of putting it on the slightly medium high side of tire wear. We definitely saw tires matter in the first Vegas race. We saw Daniel Suarez take no tires, Michael McDowell take no tires, and they went straight backward. So this is a spot where we're going to have some tire wear, but it's kind of your classic intermediate. Talk about racing at Vegas, Stevie.
Good. I mean, the racing at Vegas has been great with the next gen car. So we go to a racetrack where I would say like 5 or 6 guys have been really good in the next gen era, and it's been those 5 or 6 guys. We've seen a little bit of wild cards here and there, but I mean, betting wise, we kind of know exactly what we want to look at. So, I mean, Vegas racing is fun. I like Vegas. I like the fact that Vegas is getting more tire wear. Because I think it just adds to how good Vegas is. And you look at who's done well here recently at Vegas, and it's the guys that kind of have that dirt background that can manage their tires. Who has the dirt background and who's good at managing their tires. That's who's been really good at Vegas recently. And I think that just kind of talks to the tire wear issues, which I think is great.
Yeah, I agree with that. It definitely, Tyler Reddick, of course, Kyle Larson, who's just been absolutely dominant here, especially the last 2 Vegas races. But even Tyler Reddick was catching Kyle Larson for the win in that first Vegas race. Again, I was there. I was at that race, and he if there was 2 more laps, Tyler Reddick probably wins that first race at Vegas. I mentioned how strong William Byron was. Guys like Ross Chastain who've been very strong here. And so Ryan Blaney finished 3rd. So there's all sorts of guys here that are good, but it's very often the same guys. We saw Ty Gibbs run really well here as well, and Denny Hamlin. So we're going to be looking at a lot of the same drivers, I think. But real quick, I wanted to talk about the odds for this race because Kyle Larson has been so dominant at Vegas that right now, the longest you can find him is plus 340, which by my model isn't bettable. And I think by some other models I've seen or talked about with people is not bettable. And then there's models that actually do have value on it. So what are your thoughts on Kyle Larson at plus 340 and what it does to the rest of the field? Does it open up extra value or not?
See, I absolutely hate betting anybody that's this low, no matter what. Whether my model likes it or not. I mean, my model has him number 1, and it should. If your model doesn't have him number 1, your model's probably broken. I mean, he's finished 2nd or 1st in 4 of the last 5 races here. He's clearly been the fastest car in the 5 races with the next gen car. Like, it's no question. He should be number 1. It's just whether or not, like, if you're betting Larson at plus 350, I know you said 340, I think is what the best line was. You're not betting anything else. So you're betting one driver against 36, 37 cars. So I hate that. I really do. But Larson being the heavy favorite opens up value to bet other drivers that we don't typically get. We don't typically get like a Christopher Bell 9-1 or Tyler Reddick 9-1 at these types of racetracks. It's closer usually to like 6 or 7-1. So I think that the only way you're betting Kyle Larson this week is if for some reason he doesn't make a qualifying lap and he starts dead last and the books open him up at like 8-1. I don't think you're going to get anything better than that with as good as he's been here. my advice on if you want to bet Kyle Larson, wait for qualifying and see if something crazy happens, or try to find him in race where like a pit cycle is happening and a book opens up and leaves a lineup or something when a pit stop is happening, because
Yes,
he's
I agree.
clearly the best car. I just can't bet the 340 line.
Yeah, and even if my model was showing value on him, I don't think I could bet it, because I think there's too many things that could go wrong prior to practice and qualifying. He could qualify bad. You could always live bet him and find something that way, as you just talked about. But also, we don't know how these cars are going to perform until we see them on track. Maybe JGR 2311 found something. Maybe Penske found something. Maybe RCR stole secrets from JGR and found something, right? I mean, there's all sorts of things that could happen that we don't know. And just because Larson's been so dominant here in the past doesn't necessarily imply the future. It can strongly inform the future, but it doesn't necessarily imply that. So I think there's too much uncertainty to bet Kyle Larson at this number, even if your model had him something crazy high, and mine doesn't, but it does clearly have him number one. It's just more like a plus 525 number one rather than a plus 350 number one, right? So I think that's interesting, and it does open up some value on the board. The problem is the books also know, like you and I know, Stevie, that a lot of the guys that are good at Vegas are still going to be good at Vegas. So they've adjusted a lot of these guys appropriately. So I've actually found it hard to find value. You'll hear about that in my picks, but that's kind of where we stand on the Larson thing. Any other intangibles before we get to our picks?
No, I mean, not really. I feel like the Vegas fall race is not too much different than the spring race. A little bit cooler temps, but really not too much. So nothing too crazy. I think come practice on Saturday, the cars that have been fast are going to unload fast. It is like, the one thing you got to remember is because of playoffs and who's been locked in and stuff, kind of what Nick was just talking about, teams have been testing stuff. So it wouldn't shock me if like we see like one or two random names pop up in the top 5 of our practice stuff, because teams have been testing stuff. You test stuff, especially once you get a win, or your organization has a win, you start testing stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think that's one big thing to note. Really quick, the other thing that I wanted to note is with some of these teams being eliminated, especially Stewart-Haas, they were all very focused on Chase Briscoe. I wouldn't be shocked if we start to see a little bit more separation in the Stewart-Haas camp now that like not everyone's running the same kind of setup as Briscoe. So just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I really like those thoughts, especially on Stewart-Haas. We saw Noah Gragson really pop at the first Vegas race. You mentioned teams could be testing. We know in 2022, Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing was absolutely testing in the playoffs. Wouldn't be surprised if they do that again. And if they find something, they could be threats for the win, right? That's how good this team is. And if they find something, that's just another threat to Kyle Larson. So it is time to dive into our bets for Las Vegas. As always, we're going to take you for a lap around the track, 4 turns, 1 pick from Stevie, 1 pick from me per turn before we drive into victory lane. So we're going to wave the green flag on the South Point 400 and dive into turn 1. All right, green flag's out. Stevie, what do you got for us in turn 1?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Tyler Reddick for a top 5 here at plus 160. My model's showing value on his top 5, but it's not showing a ton of value on his outright. I'd bet his outright too. I think that I'm going to look past the model on this one and just kind of look at how good Reddick is at higher tire wear tracks, how good he is at steep tracks, and how fast he was here earlier this year. If we look at it, he was second in speed, just overall was just fantastic. Ran second most of the day, had the second most fastest laps. Just nobody could beat Larson. And it just goes back to what we were talking about. He was second highest driver rating in that race earlier this year. And if we look at past Vegas races, like he's been fast. He just hasn't had it like click, but he's finished top 10 in 4 of the last 5 races here. Really saw it click in the spring race. And I think that they come very similar to that spring race. And like we talked about, it's not very different for the fall race here. So I like Tyler Reddick for a top 5. Like I said, I bet his outright at 950, but my model's not showing value on that. It's just more of, I like Reddick this week, I'm going to bet it. But my model is showing value on his top 5 at plus 160.
Yeah, I've talked exactly about this. I don't have model value on Reddick at plus 950, but I like him a lot to where I may override my model. I haven't done it yet. Having you on the same thing makes me feel a little better about that. So, it's one of those spots. If you are able to get maybe a profit boost or something like that, push him over to 10-1, I would definitely do that. So, yeah, I think that's kind of my stance on Tyler Reddick. I mean, like I said, first Vegas race. He 1 or 2 more laps, he probably wins that race. He was faster than Kyle Larson at the end there. So right there with you, don't have model value plus 950 to win, but it's very close. Do like the top 5 plus 160 that you're taking here. For my turn 1 pick, I got a couple Chase Elliott bets. So if you want to bet his outright, I technically show value on him at 16-1. So I'm considering that a lean because I haven't officially bet that or tracked it in the Action Network app. But I do have model value on it at 16-1. I actually have model value on Chase Elliott at 14-1, but it's like plus 1380 or something, very thin at 14-1. So if you want to bet Chase Elliott, that's up to you. I do lean that. Chase Elliott, though, hasn't quite been a winning race contender this year a bunch, except he did win a 1.5 miles at Texas. A little bit different with Texas, right? We got the whole PJ1 making it a 1-lane track kind of thing, harder to pass. It was lower tire wear overall. So a little bit different scenario, but we have seen some speed from Chase Elliott at the 1.5 mile tracks this year. But what I do like is if you have Bet Rivers, and this is only if you have Bet Rivers, he's minus 139 for a top 10 finish. I definitely have value on that for Chase Elliott as a top 10 finish at minus 139. I have him at 61.8% for a top 10 finish. Again, I think my model's probably a little high on him. So even if you made that, let's say, a little bit below 60%, I can still get there at minus 139. But that would only be at Bet Rivers. That would be a bet if you have that. I don't have access to Bet Rivers, so I haven't bet it myself. But that would be, my Chase Elliott turn 1 recommendation.
We don't talk a lot about like average quality passes, but he was the highest in the spring race. It was him, Gibbs, and Truex. They had really good cars, and they just kept falling behind. Yeah. If they could just have a good day on pit road, if he doesn't have errors, like I think the top 10 is very doable for Chase. I mean, like you said, I want to bet Chase too. I mean, just overall, I'm just waiting for practice and qualifying on him because I'm hoping that maybe he struggles a little bit in practice and qualifying. We should note Hendrick has won 4 of the last 5 races here with the next-gen car, 2 by Larson, 1 by Byron, and 1 by Bowman. So Chase Elliott name not there, so he has to make it 5 of the last 6. But yeah, I like Chase. I really do. And I think I'm just going to wait for practice and qualifying because the best I have him at is minus 150. So I can't bet that, but I do like that minus 137 number.
Yeah, exactly. So Chase Elliott, lean there or a bet on his top 10 finish. For Stevie, his turn 1 pick, Tyler Reddick, top 5 plus 160. He also took Tyler Reddick outright as well. So that's turn 1. Let's roll through turn 2. All right, turn 2, Stevie. We're still on the Toyota train. I should say you're still on the Toyota train. What do you got here?
Yeah, I mean, Ty Gibbs, top 10 plus 120. I like Ty Gibbs. I bet him at 24-1 to win this race as well. I mean, it's just, I'm not stopping now when it comes to Ty Gibbs. He's been so fast on the intermediate tracks this year. A couple top 5s, finished 6th one race. The speed, if we look at just overall speed on intermediates this year, he ranks 2nd in speed above, William Byron, above Martin Truex, above Reddick, above Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain. So he's been fast every intermediate track except for the first Kansas race. And I want to take advantage of these numbers. This is one of those numbers where Kyle Larson being such a huge favorite opens up big numbers for a guy like Ty Gibbs. And the speed doesn't lie. The speed is there for him. Do I think like he's a top 3 car off the truck? Maybe. So I definitely want to bet his top 10 at plus money here.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Ty Gibbs, and he's also my turn to pick. I think the top 10 is probably the bet of the week, honestly. Top 10 plus 120. It's not our victory lane pick, but I love that. That's probably my favorite. I didn't bet it myself only because I'm going a little riskier on Ty Gibbs for my turn 2 pick. I'm taking his top 5 at plus 310. And his outright at 24-1. Those are the current prices you can get. I got 25-1 as outright. I took 3-1 earlier on his top 5, but 310 is now available. But Ty Gibbs, love him this weekend. He had a very fast car in the first Vegas race. He got set back a little bit. I can't remember if it was a pit penalty or just a slow pit stop or something like that, but he had to drive back through the field, drove up to 5th place, and just had an incredibly strong car. So I think Ty Gibbs is a driver that should probably be very strong. Again, you mentioned his speed at the intermediate tracks, at the 1.5 mile tracks. He's been so good this year. I think he can roll off the truck with top 5 speed. I really do. And all it takes is a late race restart, right, Stevie? And we get maybe a little bit of tire strategy. We get right in that window where do you take 4? Do you take 2? Do you take 0? Given Vegas is at that perfect point where you could see a blend of strategies. And that, honestly, that's how Alex Bowman, air quote, stole the win, or backed into a win, I guess, as Kyle Busch called it a couple years ago. That's the kind of thing we can see at Las Vegas, where 24-1, all you need to be is a top 3 or 5 car to give yourself a shot at doing that. And I actually think Ty Gibbs is one of the perfect spots, like Alex Bowman was a couple years ago, to do that kind of thing. I have Ty Gibbs 5.5% to win in my model. I have him 30% for a top 5 finish in my model. So if you want to use those numbers to get the fair odds there, that's what I have on Ty Gibbs.
I think there's 3 playoff drivers or non-playoff drivers that can win this race. And I think Ty Gibbs, Martin Truex Jr., and Ross Chastain are those 3 drivers. Like, those are the 3 guys. If I'm not targeting a championship 8 driver, those would be the 3 drivers I would target to win this race.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. I think Truex, Chastain, and Gibbs are all 3, exactly the 3 I would mention of the non-playoff drivers. The only other way I could see it, again, is if we mentioned something like RFK was testing and they found something, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then that, but like right now, before seeing that, before practice and qualifying, I agree with you. I think only Gibbs, Truex, and Ross Chastain would be the 3 non-playoff drivers I see potentially taking a win. So we have 2 turns down. We got 2 turns to go, but to get there, Stevie, of course, we need to get there in style, right?
Yeah, that's right. Anywhere worth going is worth going in good boots. Find your perfect pair with Tecovas. Tecovas crafts quality Western boots for everyone from generational ranchers and lifelong cowboys to first-time boot buyers. They make it easy for anyone to find their perfect boot. Want a pair of boots that are easy on and easy on the eyes? Me too. That's why every one of Tecovas boots are handcrafted with over 200 meticulous steps for broken-in comfort right out of the box. You can't have a good time in bad boots. That's why you need Tecovas. Plus, Tecovas Best in West guarantee you get free returns and exchanges for 30 days. Right now, get 10% off tecovas.com/runninghot when you sign up for email and text. That's 10% off at tecovas.com/runninghot. Tecovas.com/runninghot. See site for details. Tecovas. Point your toes west. We're going west racing. Might as well point your toes there.
Absolutely. And we're going west off into turn 3. All right, turn 3, Stevie. We talked about this driver when you were alluding to the fact that Chase Briscoe is no longer in the playoffs. Potentially a little bit of some divergence for Stewart-Haas Racing. So what do you have here in turn 3?
Yeah, I know this guy likes to wear some boots. Give me Noah Gragson at top 10. Plus 460. I bet a half a unit on this one.
Vegas boy.
And yeah, I mean, everything, right? Like, Vegas boy, like you mentioned, he's had speed here in all 3 races that he's been here in the Cup Series, and one of those he wrecked in. But 6 in the spring, back in his first race here in the Cup Series with the next gen car, he finished 11th. I like Gragson. I think that he's just kind of going a little overlooked by the books this week, and now he doesn't have to play good teammate to Chase Briscoe. If they bring the speed that they had earlier this year, I think he's a big time contender for a top 10. He ranked 10th in green flag speed and was one of the top 10 cars late in the race as far as speed. I have him like 6th or 7th in late race speed. So they obviously had a lot of speed towards the end of the race. I think they're going to unload with a really good setup this week. And I think this is just one of those bets where you have to take advantage of it before practice and qualifying. If they come out and they have speed in practice and qualifying, you're not going to be able to get the plus 460 number. I'm weighing a lot into what I talked about. I'm weighing a lot into Stuart Haas doesn't have to play Chase Briscoe's game anymore. And I applaud them for what they were trying to do. I really do. But I like Noah Gragson this week for a top 10, his home track. Send out this team in fashion with a nice race this weekend.
Yeah, I love Noah Gregson this weekend. My only issue is my model says plus 490 and this is plus 460, but I'm willing to, potentially override that one as well, overlook it given some of these factors that we've been talking about. And if we look at the first Vegas race, not only did he finish sixth, not only, like you said, was he top 10 in speed late in the race, but just looking at practice, right? He was second in single lap speed in practice. He was third in 5-lap average. He didn't make a 10-lap run. So that tells you they rolled off with some speed there. So especially if we see that again, maybe then though he goes and qualifies 30th like he did in the first race. I believe it was 30th. We get some awesome value post-practice in qualifying. So I think you could do something where maybe you sprinkle, I know you're on half unit, sprinkle a quarter unit. And if something like that happens again, throw another quarter unit on it, or in your case, half unit, and then another half unit on Noah Gragson top 10, because my model is like almost there at plus 460. I really do like this. I haven't bet it yet myself, but it's on my radar. And
really quick, like, I don't put too much stock into this because it's all kind of noise, but him and Custer have been doing like this sponsorship, like media thing all week with this new sponsor they have on the car this week. So, I mean, I feel like extra incentive when you have a sponsor like that. So, a newer sponsor to the sport. So, yeah, I mean, not putting a ton of weight into that, but I just anything I can look at to get a plus 460 bet I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. So turn 3, Stevie on Noah Gragson top 10 plus 460 half unit. For my turn 3, well, I know I say we usually, Stevie, we got one pick per turn, but I got a whole bunch of leans here. And these are all just straight up model projection value. They're all really kind of thin value based off my model projection. So these are just a whole bunch of model based leans. Got Martin Truex Jr. 18-1 at ESPN and his top 10 minus 115 at ESPN. So I have a little bit of value on both of those. I got a lean on Ross Chastain for a top 10 finish, even money. If you have Hard Rock, I have him a little bit over 50% for a top 10 at 52.2%. I got a lean on Chris Buescher, top 10 plus 140 at DraftKings. Let me pull up what I have there for him. I have him at 42.7%. So a little bit better than the plus 140 number there. And I have a lean on Michael McDowell's top 10 finish as well at 11-1. My model is actually kind of high on the front row motorsports guys this weekend. They have that Penske affiliation. McDowell's an interesting one just because he did not have speed in the first Vegas race, but it was kind of weird because he, along with Daniel Suarez, didn't stop under one of those early cautions, didn't have tires, got freight trained by the whole field, went to the back, and just never really recovered. But he has shown some speed at some 1.5-mile tracks this year. Finished 16th at Charlotte, and then had a solid run at the most recent, or I should say, the first Kansas race. So he finished 10th there. So that's why, I think 11-1 makes sense. Obviously, we talked about Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, Martin Truex Jr. as 3 of the non-playoff drivers we could potentially look at, especially if RFK rolls off with some speed. So thoughts on any of those?
Yeah, I mean, I bet Chastain's top 10 at even money. You and I were talking pre-show. I really just wanted to get some kind of bet on Ross just in general because he's just been so good here. Like, he has the best average finish in the next-gen car. He's finished 12th or better in all 5 races, and he's finished 5th or better in 4 of those races. So I wanted to get a Chastain bet. I feel like top 10 at even money is where I ended up getting my bet. So I like that one. I like Truex. It's just, I don't know what to do with Martin yet. I feel like Martin wants to win. Don't get me wrong, but I also feel like his heart's kind of out of it. I mean, he's done in 4 races. Like, he doesn't have the same fire as Kyle Busch, in my opinion, when it comes to winning a race. Like the Buescher top 10, like the McDowell lean. I'll keep saying the same thing with McDowell. Just worried that he's leaving Ford at the end of the year. So I think it's going to be hit or miss with McDowell.
Yeah, I agree with you there on all of that. Truex is such an interesting one. You're right, because he's there's no doubt he's struggled ever since his retirement announcement. But that doesn't mean he hasn't had speed at times. It's been a lot of bad luck combined with sometimes some bad strategy, some mistakes. But yeah, I mean, I do like Truex this weekend. These are all leans. I haven't bet any of these, but if you, the listener, are listening and you've got some angles or reasons to like these guys, hey, my model shows value on all of those. So those are my turn 3 leans. Stevie, once again, with Noah Gragson top 10 plus 460. So we only have one turn left. That's turn 4. All right, final turn here, Stevie. Looks like you're going back to Toyota, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a podcast theme this year, but I'm going to race winning manufacturer Toyota plus 175. My model is actually showing this as the top value bet of the week, which I thought was really interesting. My model has 4 Toyotas in the top 7 as far as speed coming into this race. So the fact that we're getting it at plus 175, just kind of for the last 5 races have been won by Chevy. Hendrick has been really fast. Kyle Larson's been really fast. William Byron's been really fast. So, like, I get it. I understand every ounce of risk with this bet. But if I'm just looking at raw speed and I'm looking at the advanced numbers, Toyota's up there. I mean, Reddick, Gibbs, Hamlin, Truex, all up there. Bubba Wallace is another guy that, like, wouldn't shock me if he runs really well this weekend. If we go back to the race from earlier this year, it was, Toyota right behind Larson all day. And if we look at the intermediate speed this year, Hamlin, Gibbs, Truex, Reddick, and Bell all in the top 10 as far as speed. So, I mean, this is just one of those bets where the advanced numbers say that Toyota is going to have a lot of speed, and the odds tell us that Chevy can't keep winning. So, you would think anyway. But yeah, I mean, again, I'm not betting Larson at plus 340, so I'm trying to bet some stuff where if Larson doesn't win this race, I'm going to do well, kind of thing. Like, I know that my weekend is determined by Larson winning or not winning. So, yeah.
Exactly. And just by my model, I've got Toyota winning right around 40%. So plus 150 would be fair value on that, give or take a little bit. So plus 175, really nice value according to my model. Agree with all the analysis. I mean, if it's not Hendrick Motorsports, it's probably Toyota winning this race. So my turn 4 pick, I'm not going to Hendrick Motorsports or Toyota. I'm going back to Front Row Motorsports like I was talking about. I'm going to take Todd Gilliland for a top 10 finish at 14-1. Just a little sprinkle here. Again, another one where my model has value, but I kind of like it. I mean, Todd Gilliland, he's been performing really at a pretty high level for Front Row Motorsports. He's ahead of his teammate Michael McDowell in the point standings. And while he hasn't quite grabbed a top finish at these 1.5-mile tracks this year, he's come close. He had a 14th at Kansas, a 17th at Charlotte, right? So there have been flashes for him at these 1.5-mile tracks, and he is a Team Penske, right? Front Row Motorsports and Todd Gilliland, they're a Team Penske affiliate. So if Penske rolls off with some speed, I think, he could be dangerous. And Penske did roll off with speed at Kansas. We saw all 3 of the Penske cars were really fast at Kansas. Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, and even Austin Cindric before his problems there at Kansas was really fast, a top 10 car. So I think this is a spot where I just want to take a little bit of a sprinkle on a 14-1 bet where it hasn't quite hit yet. So maybe the books are overcompensating for the fact that Todd Gilliland hasn't finished in the top 10, but I think he's a guy that can run in the teens, and kind of like the Ty Gibbs bet where we're betting him to win. We're betting on Todd Gilliland to hang around that top 15. And if we get a late race restart, there's potential for him to win, or I should say get in the top 10 on a strategy type play at 14-1. Because if we look around, if you're shopping Todd Gilliland around, that 14-1 at BetMGM is kind of sticking out. Pretty much everywhere else, he's down below that as far as a top 10 finish. I'm trying to pull it up here over on our actionnetwork.com/NASCAR. Yeah, I see a 12-1, but then everywhere else is around 11 or even a 650 out there. So 14-1 sticking out a little bit on Todd Gilliland over at BetMGM. So I'm gonna sprinkle it, maybe a 10th or a quarter unit if you want to do that. I think I'm gonna do a quarter unit myself. But Todd Gilliland top 10, 14-1 is my turn 4 pick.
Yeah, I don't hate this one. Ryan's been very aggressive with pit strategies. So I mean, I love aggressive crew chiefs, and the speed has been hit or miss for Gillen. If the speed isn't going to be there for McDowell and they're really focused on one of their cars. I think that's a huge bump to Todd. So, yeah, I mean, I don't hate this one.
Yeah, alrighty. So a little funsy bet maybe in turn 4 for me, and Stevie is on Toyota to win the race at plus 175. So we have completed the lap around Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Let's drive into victory lane and give our victory lane pick. Stevie, what do we have for victory lane?
Well, like I said, I bet Gibbs to win. I bet Reddick to win. And I'm going to finish the trio of Toyotas here with you with Christopher Bell at plus 950. We would not grit Christopher Bell at plus 950 if Larson wasn't plus 340. It's
Right.
as simple as that. Christopher Bell is really good on steep tracks. He's good at high tire wear tracks, and he has been outstanding at the 2 last fall races at Vegas. It's playoff time. This is when Christopher Bell is very dangerous. This is one of the reasons why I bet him to get into the Final Four. I have a championship bet on him. I have a championship bet on Joe Gibbs. I absolutely love Christopher Bell this weekend. I think he's going to be really good, and the speed is going to back it up. Didn't have the best race here earlier this year. A lot of issues in that race for Bell. He's going to come with a really fast race car, and I absolutely love him this week. So I'm right there with you. This was a no-brainer for me when it came to victory lane. I was glad that you had already written it in there with another driver. So, yeah, absolutely love Bell this week.
Yeah, same. It was the first bet I made this week. Christopher Bell 11-1. He is now plus 950 at FanDuel. I think is the longest that I see on actionnetwork.com/NASCAR or in the Action app. So yeah, plus 950. Still got value on that. I have him a little bit shorter than plus 875, closer to like plus 868, 865, let's say if you want to round, or 870 if you want to round. So that's my fair value on Christopher Bell. But everything you said, I mean, super fast at playoff Las Vegas races. Toyota always rolls off here well. And he's in the title hunt. There's going to be a lot of focus from Joe Gibbs Racing on him and Denny Hamlin. But especially, I think, Christopher Bell, just because he's in a little bit better position. But also, I just think he probably has the better shot of winning the championship than Denny Hamlin. Once we get to Phoenix, Christopher Bell rolled off at Phoenix just with absolutely dominant speed. And so I think there's going to be a lot of focus on Christopher Bell this weekend. I mentioned his pit crew. His pit crew is fantastic. So hopefully, as long as they don't have any issues there, he'll be gaining spots on pit road. So Christopher Bell, 9.5-1 is our victory lane pick for Vegas. So that'll do it for us. Thank you for listening to the South Point 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. We'll be back next week as we talk bets for the Straight Talk Wireless 400 at Homestead Miami Speedway. I love that track. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you back next week on Running Hot from Action Network.